Let's talk about Syria now, where, unlike Iraq, where Biden is at least willing to talk about the U.S. troop presence and maybe changing it, in Syria, the Biden administration says they had no plans to pull troops out of Syria. There are currently about 900 troops in northeastern Syria. This is the part of Syria that borders Iraq, and these troops are aiding the Kurdish, the Syrian Democratic forces, in their control of that territory, which includes some Arab lands, some places they're fighting against ISIS. I believe the U.S. actually carried out an airstrike on behalf of those Kurdish forces earlier this week. The U.S. is not only keeping up their occupation of Syria, but they are also imposing sanctions on the Syrian government. These sanctions are a part of the Caesar Act, saying that they are sanctioning, I think, 8 Syrian prisons and 5 Syrian officials for what was exposed through the Caesar trove of photographs. Now, there's a lot of problems with these Caesar documents. Not all of them were seen. A lot of the people that were dead in the photo were not actually victims of the Syrian government, not directly at least, but rather were Syrian army soldiers fighting on behalf of the Syrian government that had been killed. Not quite exactly sure if how targeted, how good these sanctions are. I'm sure there are horrific things that go on in Syrian government prisons. I wouldn't want to be in a Syrian government prison. That being said, there's horrific things also going on and very well documented in the camps run by the U.S. and our Kurdish allies in northeastern Syria. But, the Syrian prisons, I'm sure, are terrible. And so, maybe the 5, officials that were sanctioned were actually, torturers or who did horrible things to the prisoners living there. I don't know about that, but the sanctions against the Assad government is going to exacerbate our tensions and kind of continues the Obama-Trump policy of Assad must go in Syria. We also have the U.S. sanctioning a couple other people in Syria, but these don't seem to be Assad targets, but rather rebel groups. And one was Ahrar al-Shariki, and I probably just absolutely butchered the name of that militant group, but is apparently a rebel group to Assad, and then 2 of the leaders of that group were sanctioned along with the group itself. So that's what's happening in Syria, along with Israel bombing. Now, Russia is apparently looking to curtail this. Syria has been bombing, or Israel, has been bombing Syria at least every other week for years on end now, with the most recent strikes being targeted outside Aleppo in the Homs region of Syria. They always say that they're targeting Iranian targets. It's really hard being in the United States to actually nail down what and who is being targeted here, but I'm sure it's absolutely terrifying for the people of Syria, and sometimes civilians do die in these strikes. And Russia says that they finally had enough of this, and they're going to look to upgrade Syria's missile defense systems to help them to prevent these Israeli attacks.